Welcome back to Virginia This Morning Live right here on CBS 6. Millions of us constantly use iPhones, Apple Watches, iPads, so many devices. It's hard to keep on track there. We do it to stay connected, but the digital screen is definitely not a substitution for in-person human interaction.
Yeah, that's for sure. Today we're going to talk with an expert about the need for human connection and connectiveness. And we welcome Dr. LeKeisha Hite back to Virginia this morning. Good to see you.
Good morning. Good morning, Bill and Jessica. How are you all?
We're doing great. We're doing great. So we mentioned a moment ago when we were getting ready for the show that you had said, quoted a study before the pandemic saying people were lonely to a big degree, but I'm guessing with the pandemic that got a lot worse.
Oh, yes, most definitely. 1 out of 4 Americans, suffer with loneliness and feeling left out. So what tends to happen is that we get caught up in this social media day and time. And then with the pandemic hitting, that just magnifying that because so many people were, confined to the home. And so they found some type of joy in connecting to social media, Instagram, Facebook, even playing games, which causes people to not have that human connection with other people, and which also drives up the level of loneliness.
Now, LeKeisha, we've seen too that screens have been a savior of sorts during this time when we were only able to connect through FaceTime or using Zoom and be able to connect that way. I would imagine you've maybe working with clients found that it's difficult to determine what's beneficial, what's challenging, and how do you navigate between the two?
So I guess with COVID and the pandemic, the immediate response is more advantageous to help someone that's struggling with depression or loneliness and things of that nature, because you want to try to immediately intervene. And that's what the great thing is about telehealth and telemedicine. However, the downside to that is that you lose that human connection between your physician, your therapist, your psychologist, and the client and the patient. And because you don't have that, the affect of the actual relationship, if you will, is deeply compromised, and sometimes it's not safe. However, you're thinking about damage control, so the ability to do it via telehealth, the ability to have the right things in place to help you, deal and cope with what you're going through and trying to hurry up and get a resolution rather than just sit on it.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Hite, I had said halfway through the pandemic that when this is over, I'm going to hug everybody I meet. Well, I was kind of a hugger anyway. But obviously we're not there yet, but that's a missing part. And then another part I was looking at, and you said social media requires negativity, or actually thrives on negativity, as opposed to when you meet people face to face, it's you try to do positive things.
That's correct. So social media feeds off of fear and increased anxiety. So what happens is when people log onto Instagram and they see, if you will, people fighting, or they see something tragic, they're drawn more to that. And what social media has done is that they've conceptualize the idea of how do we engage people more into our social media platform. So they use these things to draw people in. What people don't understand is that, in a sense, that's a sense of making you more fearful and making you more anxious. And you not know that, and mentally it's really, really affecting you, but you're drawn into it. It's almost as if it's addiction. And social media knows that, which also increases, feelings of isolation and fear and anxiety surrounding that.
It's easy, Dr. Hite, to go into your feed, as you said, and just get lost in go down a rabbit hole, right, of starting to look at things. And often you mentioned that negativity and how social media, to some degree, was capitalizing on that with the logarithms, right? You're clicking on something, and now things that maybe I clicked on months ago are populating in a feed now with like videos or like content. So the headspace I might have been in months ago is still perpetuating now.
Right. So what happens is social media, they look at your usage. They see what you click on. They see what you like. They see what you continue to take an interest in. And so they put that feed either if it's on Facebook or it's on Instagram, to continue to engage you into that. And what tends to happen is that you are subliminally giving on yourself some stressors, and you're building your own anxiety, because although it's attractive, you're still fearing it and it's still anxiously driven, especially if you're someone else who struggles with a mental health illness anyway. And then what happens is you go and you seek therapy, if you will. Some people who are connected with the fact that, hey, this is not right for me. What we need to do is try to give some downtime from social media. Minimize the time that you have. They have an app on social media that shows you how much of screen time you're using. So what you can do is make yourself accountable and say, hey, I've been on social media today for 30 minutes. Tomorrow, let me try to cut that down to 20 minutes and try to engage in other things, social activities, volunteering, want to play a sport, because sitting on the computer and you just surfing, it also leads to medical, because you're not active and you're not engaging. And that's where we see a lot of physical health risks as well as mental health risks.
Interesting stuff. Thank you so much for kind of opening our eyes a little bit and letting us see this, and hopefully we can act on it.
Right. And one more thing I would like to add, Bill, is with telehealth and teletherapy, I'm not saying that not to use it. What I'm mostly saying is that it's not as safe as in person, and you're missing the human element with it. So people should try to reach out to help, but in person is more rewarding than telehealth.
While it has been a lifeline, we'll try to make those connections in person. Great talking with you, Dr. Hite. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. See you next time.
Absolutely.
And we didn't miss the irony of the fact that we're talking to her like this about
digitally.
This. So we got it. Thank you.
Again,
really appreciate
you're welcome.
it. All right. So a couple of things here, Jess. First of all, there used to be a rule when I was growing up, was if you're in public, would you say that in front of your mother if you're talking to people, right? That was like a kind of rule to follow. Then we come along with social media, and I always look like, would you say that to that person's face? Because you get into you say something really snarky to somebody that it's like, if I was talking to them, I would never say that.
It's a whole different world. My feed is filled with a lot of treasures discovered treasures from thrifting. There's a lot of that. There's a lot of horoscopes. I like looking at that. It's interesting how it all comes back, but it's important to make that connection. And if we were only able to do it before digitally, hopefully there's a way to step back into reconnecting.
And we were talking about this recently, you and I, when we were doing the show via Zoom. It's very different than you're sitting here or we're over there sitting and we're looking at each other, because the physicalness of it, when I'm through talking and I'm through making all my gestures, and it's just a whole different language.
But at the same time, I don't want to discount the fact that if you could only connect on a screen,
do that.
With FaceTime or with Zoom, that aside from kind of diving into the feed and everything, sometimes it's important to make those connections. But it's just an interesting conversation. And really what resonates is 25%, 1 in 4, that statistic was before the pandemic. So things have certainly shifted. I wouldn't even imagine. I could conjecture, I could guess where we are now, but it's important to make those connections.
Well, thanks to Dr. Hite for helping us out with that. And thank you for watching. Coming up after the break, we're going to open the lid and reveal some of the viewer submissions that came in over the weekend as part of our Everywhere You Are segment. It's coming up in less than 3 minutes.